The last time I spoke to Daryl, I told him, don't reach out to me again unless it's life or death. Well, last night, he reached out. It's been 15 years since we last talked, and I had become his benefactor, where I was bailing him out, literally and figuratively, of every kind of situation you can imagine. So the last time we talked, I had to end that relationship. I had to make it very clear that I could not be this man's last resort. But I did tell him, I said, look, man, if it's life or death, you can reach out to me. I'll have your back, no matter what. And last night, he reached out. Daryl was suffering the kind of pain that just doesn't go away. And he was looking for some kind of advice. He had recently broken up with his girlfriend, long-term girlfriend. I think years they'd been together. And she left him. And he said, it seems like she doesn't even care. Like she just walked out, she moved on to someone else, and I feel like I have been left in a hole. And I think we've all been there. We know what it's like. With a physical wound, like say someone shoots you, you know there's an end to the pain. You know that either you're going to die, the pain will end, or someone will call 911 and an ambulance will show up, and eventually you'll be healed and the pain will be gone. But with this kind of pain, there is no 911. There's no end to it unless you find a path on your own to ending it. And I tried my best to set him on that path. So today, we're going to talk about how long does it take to get over an ex. This is Life 2.0. Let's talk about it. Daryl's a really nice guy. He's smart, good looking. He's had some bad breaks. He definitely had some bad luck through the short deck in some respects, but he's made the best of it. He's a single dad, and I think he moved on from that woman and has been with this new woman now for a few years. And from what I could tell from his texting last night was that she's left him. And based on the way he was texting, it sounded like he was well into his second six-pack of beer. He texted paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. And it's not often that a guy texts you paragraphs, you know. The pain that he was describing was reminiscent of how I felt when my ex-wife left. And it was reminiscent of the stories I've heard from so many of you guys when it's just happened, you know, within that first couple of days, where you haven't got your bearings yet. You don't know what comes next. You don't understand what's happened. You're trying to replay events in your mind to see, could you have done something differently? Could this have played out in some other way? The questions that you bring up just make things so much more difficult because they're unanswerable. The one thing that I have learned from all of the interviews I've done with different guys who've gone through these kinds of breakups and through my own breakup is that old Star Trek thing, resistance is futile. Yeah, resistance is futile. And what I mean by that is you can't push against what is. You can't push against the current reality. And that's what we are so tempted to do. I think men in general, we feel like we have the ability to shape our worlds to some degree. And when something happens that is so far outside of what our expectations were, or so far outside of our control, the frustration and the loss of understanding of how to deal with this is just so profound, because we don't know what to do next. Because this event that is so dramatic and so significant and so absolutely life-altering has happened, and now you can't do anything about it. I can only liken it to a judge sentencing you out of your control. Like, okay, you're going to jail for 30 days. And you're like, holy shit, I'm going to jail for 30 days and I can't do anything about it. Not that I've ever had that experience, but I've heard how it is. And Once you've lost your control, once you no longer have the ability to shape your future, then everything else in your life begins to come into question. Like, is anything that I have, do I have any firm foundation to stand on? Because I believe that this relationship was the foundation of my life, and now that it's gone, I feel like everything is just quicksand. Acceptance is such a easy word to say, but such a difficult word to fully understand. We all basically know the definition of acceptance, but how it applies and how you use it in your life at this moment is so critical. It's difficult even to get around to the idea of I need to get into a state of acceptance because everything else in your head is just so chaotic. There's just so much emotion going on. And as men, we do not speak that language very well. We're not very fluent in emotion. And so when we are flooded with emotion, it disrupts our entire system. It disrupts everything in our lives. So acceptance has to be that lifeline that you grab for, because it's the only thing that works in this moment. Anything else, anything other than acceptance is only going to lead you down a path of more frustration and more chaos. So you've got to reach for acceptance. And that means understanding that what is has happened. This is not something that can be changed. This event is outside of my control, and I must accept that this is the case. There is nothing that can be done at this point. The die is cast. You have to let it go. Any other thought, any belief that you can change things, any belief that you can get her back, any belief that you can go back and undo something, that you can say you're sorry, that you can get forgiveness and undo this disaster, is only going to lead to more pain. That pain will cripple you if you don't get it under control. From what I can tell, my friend Daryl, he was already deep into some alcohol. He probably was hitting it pretty hard. And I know that he had had some struggles with that in his life. And I'm really concerned about him because I know that once you start going down that path of drinking, alcohol does not make sense of what's going on in your head, man. I'll tell you that right now. Adding alcohol to this mix, it's like fuel to the fire. Like you're just gonna be more and more and more emotional. The hole gets deeper. Alcohol digs the hole deeper. Drugs do the same thing because you just fall into this sense of despair, the sense of loss, like you just are worthless, like there's nothing of value in you and in your life. And that is no place that you want to be at the time when you are dealing with the loss of a relationship. Because the loss of a relationship is a lot like a death. And you know, I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but yeah, you lose the relationship, you lose the role that you had in the relationship, you know, all the relationships that were associated with that relationship. I mean, there's just so many factors that go along with this loss. It's like a death. I mean, it truly is. But unfortunately, she's not dead. She's still alive, and you're still going to run into her, and you're going to have to deal with her because I'm sure she's probably still friends with your friends, and she lives in your town, and you're going to have to come face to face with her from time to time, and it's not going to be easy. So, acceptance. Just getting quiet and clear. Sit quietly with it. Cry if you must. Do not drink. Do not take drugs. And accept the fact that your reality has changed. That's all that's happened here, is your reality has just shifted from one track to another track. You have no way of knowing at this moment whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. It feels hard, it feels bad, it feels painful, but you don't know down the road whether this might be the best thing that ever happened to you. And you just have to have faith that on some level you're being guided to what's best for you in your life. And the fact that she's gone may just be that trigger moment where your life takes a whole new path and it's going to be better from this point forward. You have to have that sort of hope in your mind. You have to have that sense of optimism. Even though you're still going to be feeling the pain and the loss, if you have that little bit of optimism in your head that this might be the best thing that ever happened, that this may be taking me down the right path, then it makes it easier to wake up the next morning, to not reach for the alcohol, to not go for the drugs, to go to work that next day to look for the opportunities that this life has. You're still going to be sad. You're still going to cry. You're still going to feel the pain of it. There's no question. That's going to go on for weeks, you know. But after that, it does start to ease up, you know. It's just like the loss of a loved one. You know, it's difficult at first, but that pain does start to rescind, and it starts to fade into the background. Not that you ever lose sight of it completely, but it's never quite as vivid as it is right now in this moment. So just allow that to happen, and just realize that this is the path that you're on, and that over the next few weeks, this pain will dull. It will no longer be as sharp. It will no longer be as devastating. You will get to a point, maybe in a few months, where the thought of the relationship no longer makes you angry or makes you desperately sad. That maybe you have the opportunity to reflect on it and see what was good and what was bad, what roles you played and things you could have done differently and all of that stuff. And maybe you can even smile and think, well, the relationship had its good spots too. Maybe there were some good things about it, and you can reminisce about it in your head. All the while knowing that you've accepted the fact that this is over and that you have moved on from it. So how long does it take to get over? Well, it depends what you think of as over. So it's been 6 years for me. And I can allow myself to get into a frame of mind that will allow me to re-experience the feelings and emotions that I had at the time of that loss, and even at the last couple years of that relationship. And I can feel the anger and frustration and the sense of loss and all the chaos that went with it. But I can also put it in context of everything that's happened since then, and how in many ways it was the best thing that happened to me. And it put my life on a different track. And I was able to pull myself together and move on. And I feel like I'm a better, stronger, healthier person because of it. So in that context, the pain and the chaos of that event is not necessarily a bad thing. I can see my own contributions to this experience, and I understand that it was probably a necessary part of my own growth. So in context, there is no pain. The pain of it is over. I think that for me, the pain was really subsiding at about the 5 or 6 month mark. And part of that was because I focused in on all the benefits associated with not being in the relationship. I thought of all the things that I could do now that I couldn't do before. All the people I could hang out with now that I couldn't hang out with before, or I felt like I couldn't. You know, how my lifestyle could be better now than it was then in certain ways. Now granted, you know, that doesn't solve the problem completely, but it does ease that pain. So in the here and now, when you're in that chaotic moment, you've got to look for those benefits. What's the benefit of her being gone? What can you do now that you couldn't do before? Exploit it, take it to the next level, hang out with your friends. You know, if there's some girl you want to date, even though I'm not big on dating after a breakup, maybe now's a good time to at least sit down and chat with her. You know what I mean? Don't let yourself get sucked into another relationship though. At the end of the day, what it really boils down to is putting yourself into the best mental state possible. And you've got to see yourself objectively as your own best friend. You've got to guide yourself as a friend onto the path of recovery. If you allow yourself to experience this completely subjectively, in that sense of pain and chaos, then it can easily envelop you and drag you down into that pit of despair. But if you can remove yourself one step from those feelings, and you can see yourself from a rational perspective, and you can say, you know, Daryl, you know, John, here's what you need to do. You need to focus on those things that benefit you in the here and now. You need to accept what's happened in this moment. Start to appreciate all those things that you could do now that you couldn't do earlier when she was here. Have faith that this shift in your reality is going to be a long-term benefit. That's going to take you down a different path that you wouldn't have gone on with her. And so the possibilities now are open. Opportunities are going to start coming your way. Keep your eyes open for them. This is a time of change. Just because it's a time of change doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's changing. All right, you guys, that's all I got for you today. I certainly hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe. If you know somebody who's going through a tough time right now, please share the video with them. By the way, remember, I put a link at the end of the video on my book on divorce. It'll work for breakups too. You know, it's the same basic steps, you know, going through that process and finding your healing at the end and turning your life around. This whole Life 2.0 thing is really more about that recovery process from beginning to end. How do you go from being chaotic to feeling competent? And then from competent, how do you go on to feeling successful, like you've nailed it, like your life is on track? And that is the opportunity that this breakup affords you. All right, you guys, until next time, stay healthy. If you can, stay single.